will start. So Tamsin, after I share my screen, I'll introduce you and then you can start your screen share.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Great. Are we live already, Nagamani? Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yes, please go.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so once again, welcoming you all to the 28th session of the Vertical 3. And this is from 7 to 8 p.m. As you all know, Vertical 3 focuses on open and proprietary softwares. Myself, Giri, one of the coordinator for Drug Discovery Hackathon. As usual, disclaimers, please do not share any personal details during this online meeting. And all your questions you can type in the live chat. And during the question and answer session, we will try to answer them as on time limit. And today we have a new partner on board for Drug Discovery Hackathon, that is Optibrium. So today Optibrium will be talking about the solution that they are going to offer for Drug Discovery Hackathon. I would like to introduce the speaker, Dr. Tamsin M. Ansley. She is the head of North American operations of Optibrium. She holds a PhD in organic chemistry from University of East Anglia in the UK. She's also have done postdoc in the lab of Professor Philip Magnus at University of Texas. Worked as a medicinal chemist at LLA and UCB Research. She has also supported several project teams and the use of computational and cheminformatics applications in drug discovery. She joined Optibrium in August 2015 to support Optibrium's fully integrated, elegant software for small molecule design, optimization, and data analysis. Over to you, Tamsin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great introduction, and I'm delighted to be here. And at Optibrium, we're very happy to support the Drug Discovery Hackathon.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. Now, I am sharing my screen, so please could you confirm that you can see the first title slide of my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see your screen.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so for the next hour or so, I intend to give a short presentation that is going to give you an overview of some of the key concepts in StarDrop, but I'd also like to provide you with a live demonstration of the software going through a hit to lead and lead optimization workflow for drug discovery to give you a feel for the type of work that you can do in StarDrop as part of this hackathon. So StarDrop is a complete package of fully integrated software, and what we focus on small molecule design, optimization, and data analysis. At Optibrium, we are not a drug discovery company. Our research goes into building the cutting edge science that we make available to you through the very intuitive StarDrop user interface. It's a modular suite of software. Some of those modules have been developed by us in-house, but where they are outside of our core expertise, our preference is to partner with leaders in their fields, and I'll talk to you more about the different software modules and some of those partners as well, some of whom will be familiar to you because they are also participating in this hackathon. We also have a very flexible approach to integration and customization so that StarDrop can work within a fully integrated research IT infrastructure. And our client base is a global client base and includes from the very largest pharmaceutical companies through biotech, academia, governmental organizations. So I'd like to start really by talking about some of the key concepts and features in StarDrop and how you would be using the software to really think about opportunities in drug discovery. And when we're working in drug discovery, one of the main objectives that we have to consider is this idea of multi-parameter optimization. I've got a couple of images here that will illustrate that. So we might start a project with a hit or a lead compound that shows some degree of potency, as I'm showing in the top image. but we want to get as quickly as possible to this drug candidate, which shows a balance of all of these different properties, not only potency, but other things like solubility, metabolic stability, safety. And we also want to identify situations like that in the bottom image, where there is no appropriate overlap between the potency space and all of the other properties that are needed for that good drug candidate. Now, that's often called fail fast, fail cheap, get out while you can, but project teams really don't want to fail. What you do want, though, is the confidence that you have appropriately explored the chemistry space around this hit or lead compound. And in silico tools can really help to support doing that very thoroughly. And you also want to have the confidence that you haven't missed any valuable opportunities that could, in fact, lead you to a good drug. So the way that we approach this in StarDrop and quickly target that high quality chemistry right through a project lifecycle, both in hit to lead and lead optimization, is an approach that we call probabilistic scoring. This is our approach to multi-parameter optimization. So what you will do in StarDrop is you will build up a profile of properties that describes that ideal drug candidate that you're trying to achieve. These properties can be measured properties, or they can be predicted properties, but each one will have a desired value, range, cutoff, category, or even a more complex desirability function. And they will vary in importance to you. Some of the properties might be very critical that you meet those conditions, but there might be others that you simply want to keep an eye on. And so you can set that importance appropriately. But this allows you to prioritize your compounds that have the highest chance of success of meeting your project's objectives. And uniquely, what StarDrop does is it takes into account all of the uncertainty in the project-related data, whether this is assay variability or uncertainty in statistical predictive models, so that you can really have the confidence in your decisions. Now, the output of this is a numerical score from 0 to 1, where a higher number indicates a higher probability of success. But we also provide these histograms that give a visual guide to how well each one of these individual properties is being satisfied, so that you can not only understand which are the highest priority compounds, the best scoring compounds, but what you would want to focus on to further optimize that balance of properties. In the example that I've got on the screen here, we've got a problem with this light blue property. So I would be looking to optimize log P. In a chemical space visualization, we can look at the diversity of the data set and consider the similarity of compounds, both in terms of structure or properties. Each compound is represented by a single point, and compounds that are very similar to one another will cluster tightly together. You can also use a color to represent a property or a score. And so in this example, I can see some high quality compounds in the top right of my screen. Now, of course, I could select those, but it's not always the best idea to synthesize a lot of very similar compounds. That's putting all of your eggs into one basket, so to speak. But in StarDrop, what you can do is you can make selections of compounds that focus on those high quality compounds, whilst also sampling through other areas of chemistry space to avoid missing opportunities. And then we wrap all of this up together in a suite of interactive visualization tools, really designed to help you understand the SAR in your chemical series. For example, a plot showing the output of an R group analysis, where you can explore changing side chains at different parts of your molecule and the effect that those will have on properties. Now, I'm sure you're all very familiar with working in a chemically aware spreadsheet, but this can actually be quite restrictive because at its heart, it's a one-dimensional list of compounds with structures and properties, and it can be quite challenging sometimes scrolling up and down the spreadsheet trying to group interesting compounds together. So in StarDrop, we also have another way of working with the data, which is called card view. Card view is very, very flexible in that you can design a template to show your key data on each card, and each card is representing a compound. So you can make a template for your project. These cards can be moved around freeform on this unlimited desktop, as I'll show you during the demo. Interesting compounds can be grouped together or even stacked on top of each other so that you can compare the properties of compounds within a series or compare one series against another. And then you can also use these links shown as arrows in the spreadsheet here to explore the way that properties are changing between compounds or put together a timeline for your project. So these relationships can be very useful to highlight some of the key relationships in your project and give insights to guide lead optimization. Now, this has all been about making selections from the compounds that you already have access to, but you also want to be able to design the next round of compounds that have an improved balance of properties. And there are ways that we can support that in StarDrop. First of all, you'll be able to predict the properties of compounds before you synthesize and test them. And you can interactively explore your new ideas using these sketching tools in StarDrop's interactive designer and get that instant feedback on the changes in the properties for those idea compounds. Now we go beyond giving a number which is just bigger or smaller than before, and you can see here this glowing molecule is indicating which parts of the structure are having a big impact on that property prediction. Red areas are raising that value and blue areas are lowering it. So you'll see that depending on whether you want a higher or a lower value for the property, you'll want more red or more blue in your molecule. But it also helps you to understand why this prediction is different than for another compound, and also where you could make changes to the molecule to have a big impact on changing that property. And of course, you want to be able to collaborate and share the results of your analysis. In StarDrop, you can save a StarDrop project. This project contains not only your data, but all of the visualizations, card layouts, annotations, analyses that you have carried out, everything together in one place so that you can close StarDrop, come back to it another day and pick up exactly where you left off, or save it and share it with project team members so that you all have the same view of the data. And of course, we understand that data doesn't stay static. So in StarDrop, you can also refresh your analyses, bringing in the latest data and instantly updating your data sets and your visualizations and all the other analyses. We highlight in yellow any data points that have changed, and we also highlight for you any rows that are new. So you can easily see exactly what has changed since the last time you were working in StarDrop. And then we provide the opportunity to very quickly create presentations and reports, both in Windows and Mac. This is an example of a single-click export of a pivoted project meeting template where you're highlighting some key compounds and data that you want to share. Now, there are very many ways that StarDrop can integrate with your research and your IT infrastructure, and we're making some of those available to you as part of this hackathon. Some examples are integration with databases, StarDrop can also integrate with docking and alignment software. It can be extended through custom Python scripting, and you can also bring your own models in and make those available in StarDrop. As part of this, I'd also like to highlight some of the links that we can make with third-party platforms, and some of these might be useful to you during the hackathon. For example, links to compound vendors like Molport, eMolecules, and Enamine to understand what is readily available for purchase, or links to public knowledge bases like Chembl, PDB, and PubChem to find out more information about compounds. And finally, this link to IC-Synth from Infochem, where you can send off a compound to search, and they will return information on 5 different synthetic pathways, together with literature evidence that would support those synthetic pathways. So these will all be available to you as part of the hackathon. Now, everything that I've talked about so far has been in the core of StarDrop, but as I mentioned right at the beginning, StarDrop is a modular platform with a suite of plugin modules that extend the core capabilities through a very comprehensive range of in silico modeling and de novo design approaches. It's very flexible, so our clients license only those modules that they need for their research, and we're making a couple of those available to you as part of this hackathon. Just to give you a brief summary of the modules that we have available, you will have access to our ADME-QSAR module, which provides a suite of high-quality global models for predicting some key ADME properties, things like blood-brain barrier penetration, hERG liability, human intestinal absorption, solubility. Of course, you may also want to build and validate your own models, and you will also have access to our auto modeler module, which allows you to build models for your chemistry and your data, perhaps a model that would be able to predict the activity for a lead series. And as you can see, there are a range of other modules that are available to people who license StarDrop in the areas of computational chemistry, de novo design, and some with our partners. For example, the presentation preceding mine was from the folks at Biosolve IT with their CSAR application, and I believe you're also collaborating with our partners at Cresset, who make Torch 3D available in StarDrop. But as I mentioned, you'll be focusing on the first two, the ADME-QSAR and AutoModeler modules. And I've included this slide, which contains several key references to support the science behind all the information that I've presented to you this afternoon. So with that, that was the end of the overview part of the presentation. I'd like to move into StarDrop and give you a live demonstration, and then we can come back and I'll finish up with just a little bit more information about the package for the hackathon. Okay, so I have StarDrop open on my screen. In this gray area, this is where you're going to load and work with the data. On the left are a series of tabs for accessing the main tasks in StarDrop. I'll focus on the first 4 of these today. Other tabs are more focused on some of the different add-on modules. And on the far right, there's a toolbar that I'm going to use for some of the commonly accessed features in StarDrop. These tools are all available under the View, Dataset and Tools menus, and you'll see more about this next week when one of my colleagues gives you a more in-depth training. The demonstration that I'm going to give today is focused on the core of StarDrop and the ADME-QSAR module. Okay, so I'm going to open a data set. This is actually a project that one of my colleagues saved for me, and it contains the hits. I can see at the bottom there are 191 hits from a screening at the NK2 receptor. For each compound, let me make these a little bit bigger, we have the structure, the compound ID, the biological activity, and information about a lead series tag. And if I go into the visualization area, I can very easily see the number of compounds in each one of those series simply by clicking on the lead series column header. What might be more useful, though, is to know the average activity of these series, because I'm looking for a good starting point for my project. I want to evaluate these hits from these different series. And so if I go to the charts button at the bottom of the visualization area, I can create a box plot. And now I can easily see that, well, on average, the amidoxime series is the most active for this project. This data set happens to be sorted in terms of activity, and I can see also that the most active molecule here is also from that amidoxime series. Let me detach this plot, keep a copy of it so I can work with that later. If I detach it, it goes into my dashboard. And what I'd like to do is look at the chemical diversity of my data set. So let me, instead of looking at the box plot here, I'm going to change and look now at a chemical space. What I want to do is I want to create a new one for this particular data set. And you can see that we've got a couple of methods for creating and displaying these. I'll use chemical structure today. And here we get several different clusters now of compounds in my data set. Each of these points represents a single compound. You can hover over a compound. You can also make these labels permanent by right-clicking on them, but you can also see that if I have two compounds close together, they have similar structures. If I go for one of the other clusters, you can see that they have different structures in them. We can color this chemical space by the activity. And so in this case, we're working with pKi, so a more positive number is going to be a better activity. Let me change the background here to make it slightly darker. And so what I can see now is that up in the top left, this is where I've got a lot of very active compounds. In fact, if I select, say, the first 20 compounds in my data set, I can see those are highlighted here in green in the chemical space. They're also highlighted in the box plot. So all of the plots and visualizations and the data set in StarDrop are fully integrated and responsive to each other. Let me take a copy of the chemical space, put that in the dashboard, and in fact what I want to do is I'm going to arrange these so that that is stacked right on top of the box plot. All right, now, as you know, it's not only about the potency of compounds, so I'm going to get some more data about these compounds so that we can start to prioritize those that might be successful in a project at the NK2 receptor. To do that, I can go to the Models tab, and here we have a list of the StarDrop physical property calculators together with our ADME models. Let me select each of those and click Go. And that is going to run those and put an additional 20 or so columns into my data set. You can see that those have all been added here. Now, I mentioned in the presentation that it's very important to consider the uncertainty. And you can see by double clicking on any of these points that we provide not only the value for the prediction, but the confidence that goes along with that, so that you can understand whether that compound is similar enough to be considered within the domain of applicability of that model. StarDrop takes all of that uncertainty into consideration in the background. So we're always considering it. Now, at this stage, there's more data than I can start to prioritize in my head. And so I'm going to use the scoring in StarDrop to help me identify the compounds with the highest chance of success. In StarDrop, we provide 5 out-of-the-box scoring functions. There's a Lipinski rule of 5, and then there are 4 ADME-based scoring functions that describe compounds that would have properties as an oral CNS or non-CNS drug, or an intravenous CNS or non-CNS drug. And you can use these as the jumping off points for your projects. I also have one that my colleague saved here in the project for me that's describing a molecule which is active at this receptor, as well as having this balance of ADME properties. So I'm going to simply run this scoring profile. You see it runs very quickly to provide a score for each of these compounds. Now, if I look at this compound, it's the most active in my series, sub-nanomolar compound, but it has a very low 5% probability of success. I can see why that is. Although it's very active, this blue bar, it's got problems with solubility and with human intestinal absorption. So perhaps it's very successful in vitro, but it would have problems if we were dosing this in vivo. Let me right-click on the column header and sort descending to bring to the top the compounds with the highest score. So this compound has about a 38% chance of success. From screening data, that's a really good starting point. I would be looking for this score to increase as the project matures. And it's also very easy to rewrite a scoring function. Suppose a property, you get into an area of chemistry space where all the compounds have a good value for that property. You could make that less important. Or perhaps you find that there's some other liability in the compounds that you want to add to the scoring profile. So you can very easily edit a scoring profile or generate a new one, rescore the compounds in your data set and see whether anything else pops to the top, anything that you would otherwise have missed. But in this particular case, I can see that I've got a much nicer overall balance of properties for this particular compound. Lots of high bars here in the histogram. All right, so far we've looked at some visualizations, we've looked at the data set, and we've scored the compounds. What I'd like to do now is take a look and work with the data in card view. So to access card view, I can go to the third button down on the right toolbar, and here I get a grid where I have one compound represented on each card. I can navigate through this grid using this mini map to make some of the gross movements, or simply by clicking and dragging in on the desktop. I can also zoom in and out to focus on individual cards. So if I zoom here on the top left, what you can see is, again, here is that very, very active compound with the low probability of success. Let me sort the data set so that I have the high scoring compounds at the top. And so now I've got here that compound with the 38% chance of success. In StarDrop, we can also, in CardView, we can also color the cards by a property or a score. So I'm going to color them by the affinity. They're organized by the score. They're colored by the affinity. So a yellow color will indicate compounds that are more active. And now I can see that, in fact, the highest scoring compounds are not the most active. We have yellow cards scattered throughout this data set. Now here's my highest scoring card, but here's another one that's high scoring and also has more activity. It's a more yellow color. So let me compare the two of these side by side. Here we go. Now, in fact, I can see here, yes, we've got a 1.5 log unit difference in activity, but due to lower solubility, log P, increased risk of Hurg affinity, this compound has a significantly lower score. In fact, we can have multiple pages to these cards, so you can group different properties together. Here are some of my ADME properties. You can even add notes. So I can write here, watch Hurg. This note is saved here on the card. It's also saved in a new column in the dataset table, so that if you were to export this data, that annotation, that thought process would be captured in your export as well. Now, if I look at these two compounds, they look very similar to me. They belong to a single lead series, so I can combine them into a stack simply by dragging one over the other. And now I can start to look at how some of these properties, like the affinity, are varying for members of this series. That one is a different series. Let me see, this Chi would go with that, and so on. But of course, this would be like watching paint dry, even for a couple of hundred compounds. So in StarDrop, we have added some analyses that will automate the stacking process for you. The first one I want to show you is clustering. We can cluster by common substructure, whole molecule similarity, or by similarity in properties. Today, I'm going to cluster by common substructure. And so I'll just use the defaults and click cluster. What StarDrop is doing is it's grouping together compounds that share a common substructure. But you also get stacks that share similar common substructures. And I have an example of that here, where I have 3 stacks very close to each other. And if I zoom in on those 3, you see that they all have similar common substructures. They vary in the substitution on this portion of the molecule, and also on the amide nitrogen. Now, with my medchem background, I can see that these really all share a common core. And so what I would like to do now is fine tune this clustering and simply drag those 3 clusters one on top of another to make a single larger cluster. And I can rename this as my quinolines. That would be one of my lead series. You can also double click or right click and inspect the contents of any cluster, such that if there's a molecule in there that you think shouldn't be there, it's possible to, let me move further out, drag that out onto the desktop. And then if you created a new molecule, of course, you can very easily drag and drop that onto that template, that cluster. All right, now I'm not going to go through fine-tuning all of these, because if you remember, we had the series tag as a column in the data set. And so another way to organize these is to stack the compounds by a property. I'll select that series tag and we'll get those 6 different stacks, one for each of the 6 series tags that we saw at the beginning of the presentation. We're showing the common substructure for each of these series, but it can be more useful to look at some different information. So of course you can customize the template that is shown. I'm going to use a saved template, this NK2 card template, to display the range of affinity values for each cluster of compounds, for each stack, as well as the overall project score. Now I can compare one series against another. So this amide oxime series here contains a lot of very active molecules, but they are low scoring. These are the compounds that we saw that might have been good in vitro, but might have problems in vivo. This peptide urea series is essentially dead. It's got very low activity for these compounds because the activity was important in our scoring profile. That's resulting in low scores. However, this phenylpiperazine series looks a lot more interesting. It's got a range of activities so that we can explore the SAR, and it's also got some compounds with higher scores. Let me bring back the chemical space, and instead of coloring it by affinity, I'm going to change the coloring to show the overall scores for the compounds. And now you can see that there's a cluster here with some high scoring compounds. If I select this cluster by lassoing it, that is our phenylpiperazine series. However, I also want to be sure that I'm not missing any important opportunities. And so let's go to the visualization tab and look at another plot, which is called the snake plot. Here in the snake plot, we order the compounds from the high scoring ones on the left to the low scoring on the right. The scores themselves are on the y-axis, and these whiskers are indicating the confidence in the score. Because there was uncertainty in the data going into creating the score, there is uncertainty in the score itself. So that's illustrated here. Now, what this means, though, is that this bottom half of the data set, they're low scoring, and I'm confident that they're low scoring. So I can eliminate these compounds with the confidence that my eventual drug candidate will not be amongst them. But what I cannot do is take this guy, the highest scoring compound, and say, this is the absolute best compound. This is the one that we should go with, because there is significant uncertainty in that score. You can see these whiskers are going up to almost 0.6 here. So what I can do is I can take the bottom of this whisker and I can move out to the right until I get to about 30, 35 compounds, and then I stop getting compounds where the whiskers overlap with that first one. And at that point, statistically, I can say that that compound is significantly better than all of these. But these sort of first 35 compounds, I would want to get more data about those. Perhaps assay them on multiple occasions to remove or reduce uncertainty in the assay data, or get assay data instead of predicted data to overcome the statistical uncertainty. What you can see is this selection I've made. There's actually 36 that I lassoed, but it's selecting from across my data set from 5 of the different lead series. This blue area is showing the proportion of each series that has been selected. So this is a diverse subset that I would like to get more data about. I would also like to follow up on this phenylpiperazine series. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of these compounds into a new data set. Phenylpiperazine series, and click OK. I can minimize my dashboard again. Here you can see that we've got now a second tab at the bottom of the screen. And in the second tab, we've got the 15 compounds that are members of the phenylpiperazine series. Let me resort this data to bring the highest scoring compound to the top. And I also want to apply a different card template. This just shows some additional data on the card template. Now, this compound is going to be my reference, and what I'd like to do is explore the structure-activity relationships around this compound in an analysis that we call an activity neighborhood. Here, we're looking for the 10 nearest neighbors to this compound using a whole molecule 2D structural similarity. And we're going to link each of those 10 compounds to that reference and color the links in terms of the difference in affinity for each pair of compounds. And this is the output. We get this spiral layout with the reference compound in the center. The compound immediately to its right is the most similar. It has the highest Tanimoto similarity, and the compounds spiral out with decreasing similarity. The arrow is indicating the difference in affinity for each pair of compounds. It is pointing to the more affine compound in the pair, and the color is indicating the magnitude of that difference. So here I have a gray arrow pointing to the left. If I zoom in, I can see that in fact these two compounds have a fairly similar activity, 7.6 and 7.5 for the NK2 PKI. But if I look at this pair with the compound on the right, I can see there's this very big difference in activity, 1.5 log units. So here we have an activity cliff. We've identified this very, very easily. It's a pair of compounds that are structurally similar, but have a big difference in a property such as activity. In fact, this is the pair that we saw earlier where we have that 1.8 log unit difference in activity, but the score is lower for this compound due in part to higher log P and a higher propensity for Hg affinity. If I look at the structures of these molecules, I can see that the difference is a benzene ring versus a pyrrole ring. So clearly the receptor really likes this benzene ring in terms of activity. However, these other problems, the additional lipophilicity is causing that lower score. And so maybe we can look at some design strategies to overcome this. Let's consider the Hg affinity. If I click on this, I will see the glow that's associated with the Hg. And I can see that there are just two small blue areas in this molecule, which are lowering that predicted Hg affinity, whilst there's a lot of red, particularly for this benzylic amine. It's a known Hg pharmacophore. So let's use the StarDrop design capabilities to see if we can identify a compound that would perhaps have a lower pKa, reduce the lipophilicity of this benzylic amine. And we can do that here on the design tab. I can use the bond tool. I'm going to simply convert this amine to an amide. As I do that, you're going to see the glow change, and you'll also see these predicted properties update. So click and drag to add a bond. Click on the bond to make it a double bond. Hover and type to make that an oxygen atom. Now you can see that we've added some more blue into this molecule with this new carbonyl. We've reduced the red in this lower portion of the molecule compared to its parent. The Hurg prediction has dropped from 6.7 to 5.7, so that's definitely going in the right direction. Let's compare the log P for these two molecules. And in fact, we've gone from 4.8 to 3.5. And again, we've added more blue into the molecule. So more blue is desirable when we're trying to get a lower value for a property. So this is a compound that we might be interested in synthesizing. So let's add it to the data set. I'm going to add it to my existing data set. You could also create a new data set to house your new ideas. Let me go back to the data table, and you'll see that that molecule has been added right here. We have calculated all the properties for that compound, as you can see. We have had a go at scoring the compound, but this opaque color indicates that some of the data is missing. That's the affinity. Obviously, we can't measure the affinity for a compound that is not yet synthesized. If you had a model built with StarDrop's auto modeler module, you could have an alternative scoring function that would assess the predicted affinity together with those ADME properties. So there's a couple of things I want to do with this compound. First, I'm going to give it a virtual ID, my idea 1, just so that I can start to keep track of these before I export them to register in a database. The other thing that I might want to do is to understand ways in which perhaps I might be able to synthesize this molecule or go to a compound vendor, see if it's something that is already available to purchase. So this is where those scripts come in that I mentioned to you. I have several of these installed here. The one that I'm going to look at is the synthetic assessment with IC-Synth. So I can select the compound in my data set, send it off for that synthetic assessment. This will take a moment. What it does is it sends it off to the IC-Synth Lite website. The search will take a minute. So I actually ran it prior to the start of this meeting. And you can see here that this is the molecule that I submitted. And now here are the 5 different synthetic routes. And I can click on one of these routes and see the references that would support the chemistry that is being proposed. Okay, so that's the point at which I wanted to finish the demonstration. Here we've done some hit triage work. We've identified 2 subsets of compounds to follow up on, a diverse subset to get more data on, and a focused single lead series where we did some SAR analysis, identified a liability, came up with a hypothesis and a strategy for designing new compounds with an improved balance of properties. So let me just finish up in the PowerPoint with a little bit more information about the package that is available to you. As I mentioned, we're offering the StarDrop Core application, and we're including 2 of our modules, the ADME QSAR and Auto Modeler modules. And you will have access to that for a period of 3 months. You will also have access to several of our scripts that link with third-party platforms, such as the publicly accessible databases, the synthetic tractability assessment, and the compound vendors. Included is training provided by web meetings, and I believe that our introductory training is scheduled on Tuesday at 6 o'clock IST. I do apologize if I've got that time wrong. I'm trying to work across time zones. We provide comprehensive manuals. You can find under the help menu in StarDrop, there is a user manual that tells you how do I do an R group analysis? How do I load my data? There's also a reference guide that tells you all the science underpinning the algorithms and models in StarDrop. We're going to make some online tutorials available to you as part of this hackathon, and our support email is via india@optibrium.com, where we'll be working with Zastra Innovations to provide that technical support for you. And in conclusion, StarDrop, as I think you'll have seen, is a very complete package for small molecule design, optimization, and data analysis. There is a lot more information on our website and also on our community website, including a lot of publications about the information that you've seen today. So that's the point at which I want to end. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Tamsin, for this wonderful presentation, including a short demo. So we have few questions. Due to the time limitation, we try to take most of them. The first question is, can we identify the difference between the isosphere replacement and also if the activity increases by isosteric replacement, how about to consider toxicity?
Right, so we have methods in our NOVA module that are focused on looking at isosphere replacements and functional group transformations. But in the core of StarDrop, I think you would be designing those molecules yourself and loading those in. One thing that you can do if you do an R group deconvolution, it's possible to enumerate all of the different combinations of those R groups and start to evaluate those. So that might be a good way of looking at the different isosphere replacements. What was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
So when we try to replace it, and if the activity increases, how do we consider toxicity also while we are focusing on increasing the activity?
Of course. So again, we have a module that considers toxicity in partnership with LASA Limited, but that is not included in the package for the hackathon. We do a couple of our models that I showed are addressing metabolism of the compounds, though.
Okay. Okay. Another question: by doing clustering, do we develop any pharmacophore maps or references?
That's a great question. You would need to take the results of the clustering and try to relate that to a property, I believe. It's not directly building pharmacophore models.
Okay.
Again, I think that is something that's probably better addressed by some of the software in other packages. For example, I know our partners at Crescit that you're working with, they have the ability to align molecules in 3D and identify some of those key pharmacophores for activity.
Okay. And what is the main purpose of the snake plot?
Oh, so the main purpose of the snake plot is really, as I showed, to understand that you need to consider the uncertainty in the score when you're making selections of compounds so that you don't miss any valuable opportunities. You wouldn't want to select only your highest scoring compound, but to understand which compounds statistically have a chance of actually being as good as that high scoring compound. For example, when you assay compounds on multiple occasions, each time you're going to get a slightly different value for that assay. And so the snake plot really helps you to understand and take that into consideration in combination with the probabilistic scoring.
Okay. And as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, this is mostly focusing on a ligand-based approach. But one of the question is, do we do not need to do any docking or to understand target protein binding in order to go through all these ADME, QSAR, pro-drug strategy, and others? So, what would your comment on that?
So my comment would be that we have modules in StarDrop that can address the docking, particularly in partnership with Biosolve IT. So absolutely, as part of a complete project analysis, docking and structure-based design can be a very important part of that. The QSAR method that we use for our model predictions, though, is purely ligand-based. We take the QSAR models are built by taking a set of compounds with their structures and a known measurement for the property that you want to build the model for example, solubility. And we calculate descriptors for all of those compounds, including a lot of structural fragment-based descriptors, as well as some whole molecule descriptors. And then in the QSAR, the machine learning algorithms, when we're building the models, they are able to relate all of those descriptors to the measured property to build the model. And at that point, you will be able to then submit your own molecules to get the prediction out, as I showed during the demonstration. I believe our colleagues at Zastra are going to be giving some training on using the Auto Modeler module to build your own models.
Okay. Another interesting question is kind of a clarification. Is this software only for understanding pharmacokinetic properties or any more to do?
This software can work with any data that you have for your project. And so, no, it's not solely for the pharmacokinetic properties. I showed a range of the properties that we have embedded in our software, but if you have other data, you can definitely bring that in, use that in your scoring profile to evaluate your compounds.
Okay. Another question, is there any module that can generate analogs of a known compound or also predict the derivatives of those known compound?
So that module would be StarDrop's NOVA module, which provides 3 different approaches to de novo design.
Okay. And the final one, is there any option that you can replace a particular scaffold or by understanding its pharmacophore?
Not directly, no. We do approach some of that in StarDrop's NOVA module, but in the core of StarDrop, we don't have an approach to directly replacing a scaffold.
Okay. Okay, I think we are done with most of the questions. So that's really great. Thank you so much for patiently answering all of the questions.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. And if you have any concluding remarks, please go ahead so that I will conclude the session.
So I would just say we're very much looking forward to supporting
if you have any further.
Yep, we're very much looking forward to supporting the hackathon and delighted to be part of it together with these other software partners.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tamsin, for the wonderful presentation as well as the demo. Thanks again, and we are looking forward to more sessions like hands-on on specific modules, which you already mentioned during your presentation. And I take this occasion to thank both the new partners on board as well as other partners who are already with us. and the members of the DDH training team, the virtual tool room, MyGov, and all the others. And viewers, please stay tuned. Tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., we have the virtual tool room session, which will be showcasing about how to access CDAC resources and how to get access to all the softwares, including the two of them which is being introduced today. So thank you. That's all for today. Have a great evening. Bye for now.